Hey, Ricky, know what's awesome?
What's that?
Saturday morning cartoons.
You betcha!
All right, so at some point, well, first of all, welcome to the What's Awesome podcast. I'm your host Billy. This is your other host Ricky,
Yep.
and we're here to talk about everything that's awesome. And I've actually talked to a couple of friends of mine, and this is a couple of friends of mine that I've talked to prior to the first episode of this show actually coming out. So figure this is the public service announcement because Ricky and I are both known for doing horror podcasts, and we're also both known for talking about stuff from the 80s. So
Shut your mouth!
we're gonna talk. We're gonna talk a lot about stuff from the 80s, and we're gonna talk a lot about stuff that is horror related because that's just our pedigree. That's where we come from. That's what we love. But this podcast is neither a horror podcast nor is it an 80s podcast. This is a show about everything that's awesome.
Yes.
So, um, if you listened to us last week, we were talking about the video store, the horror section, primarily because that's where we were both hanging out. I can just imagine, like, um, you roll back, Jesus, 30 something years ago.
Yeah.
You got two kids standing in a video store looking at horror movies, and that was us. And there was a lot of really fun stuff. And right now, the world is going through some really stressful stuff. I mean, we're all quarantined. We're all home alone. Hopefully, maybe by the time this episode comes out, that'll be all done. But we figured it was just time to talk about some fun things. So you know what's awesome? Beer. You know what's awesome? Microphones. You know what else is awesome? Smoking in the boys' room. It's like stuff that you just. It's awesome. We don't do it anymore because we're smarter and maybe a little bit more grown up, but it's still cool. So we're going to talk about that kind of stuff. So if you got some ideas for things we should talk about, hit us up on Facebook and let us know what's awesome. And if we think it's awesome, we will certainly talk about it. So this week, Saturday morning cartoons.
Yes.
What happened to Saturday morning cartoons? They're not there anymore. Now they're lawyer commercials.
Well, you got channels that are just cartoon channels all the time now, so they feel like you don't have to have that Saturday morning thing. We had the 3 networks back in the day, and that's how we got to see cartoons. And really, you didn't see them any other time. You might catch an episode of, I don't know, Pink Panther or something after school before the Sha-Na-Na show or something. But as far as the current stuff, Saturday morning was it, man.
It like one of my earliest memories. So I was a kid. We lived in Houston when I was 6. We moved outside of Corpus Christi, Texas, to a little town called Portland. And when I was 12 or 13, we moved back to Houston. So this was before we moved there. So I was 5, maybe 4 or 5 years old. I remember I had a little black and white TV sitting up on top of a chest of drawers in my bedroom, and waking up. It was still dark outside. Waking up Saturday morning, popping on that TV. It was a pull on snap switch. So like you pop it out and you click the channels.
Yep.
And a black and white version of Underdog. Well, it was a black and white TV, so it was probably a color version of Underdog, but it was
to you, it was black and white.
Watching and sitting on the edge of my bed, just absolutely entranced, like dun dun dun. And he's an Underdog and Mighty Mouse, and like, and as a little kid, I mean, 4 or 5 years old, man, it didn't occur to you that was a dog. You wanted to be that guy.
Oh yeah.
Like you wanted a cape. you wanted to fly. You wanted that epic music screaming out behind you. Like, yeah, I'm freaking Underdog, man. And that magic, dude, that is lost. That's gone. Yep. My children go on Netflix. They flick it. They can sit there and watch an entire season of a show in like 10 minutes. And I'm just like, I'm like, man, come on. This is not as fun as it used to be.
Well, ironically for me, speaking of dogs, it was about Hong Kong Phooey for me, man. I mean, I grew up a Bruce Lee fan, so here's a cartoon where you got a dog that's a janitor during the day and a Hong Kong, superhero at night. Which he never really did anything right. It was the cat that always saved the day, right? And
of course,
that was my cartoon, man. My dad, of course, just like myself, or I'm like him, was a musician. So at nights he'd be playing. He'd get home, it'd be 3:00 in the morning, and Hong Kong Phooey would come on at 7:00 on Saturday mornings, and I would go knock on his door and say, "Hey, Dad, Hong Kong Phooey's coming on," thinking that he would want to get up and watch it with me. And he's like, "Oh, that's good."
That's awesome.
But yeah, man, Hong Kong Phooey was probably my starting point as far as really getting into my own shows.
That whole Hanna-Barbera.
Oh yeah, man.
That everything, because
it's like the Grape Ape.
Yeah, Grape Ape and Captain Caveman.
Captain Caveman.
But the thing was, man, it's like, yeah, you had favorites. You had your shows that you really liked. Like for me, and I think I tracked it back on the very first episode of Scary Dad. Before I met Scott, it was probably a year before I met Scott, I decided I'm going to give this podcast thing a try. And I did it by myself in my car with a microphone because I'd written a horror movie blog. I started Scary Dad, right? So I wrote a blog about stuff. So I figured I'd give it a shot, and I was like, okay, so what really started where did I start with loving horror, right? Like ghost stories and spooky things. And this is not a Saturday morning cartoon, but when I was a kid, like in the afternoon, my mom would make me take a nap, and when I woke up from the nap, Scooby-Doo was on.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And 70s Scooby-Doo, all Scooby-Doo really is pretty, it's tame comparatively. But man, they had some stuff like the haunted houses with the webs and the monsters and the glowing, creepy guys and stuff. And just, I wanted to be in the Mystery Machine.
Yeah.
I wanted to be those guys because I wanted to see that stuff. I'm like, there's trapdoors everywhere.
Yeah.
Like trapdoors is one of those things, kind of like quicksand. You see the memes about, like, I thought quicksand was going to be a much bigger deal than it was from being a kid, because quicksand was the thing. But dude, trapdoors in cartoons, trapdoors were everywhere.
Yeah.
Like you couldn't just walk across the floor without there being a trapdoor and drop you into a cage.
Right.
So, but watching Scooby-Doo, and so, man, you had your favorites. For me, Scooby-Doo's just got that special place in my heart that'll always be there. But that same Hanna-Barbera, that art, Yogi Bear,
Blue Falcon and Dynamite.
Droopy?
Blue Falcon and Dynamite, man, I was all into that. Droopy, man, you're getting over into your MGM stuff at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, I love me some Droopy. I'm so happy.
Oh yeah.
Is it Tex Ritter? Isn't that what his name? What was his name? Tex Avery. Yeah.
Yeah.
All of his stuff, man. So goofy and over the top, man. Just fantastic.
And the thing was, the cartoons would start at like 4 or 5 in the morning.
Yeah.
And of course, I was Central. So you'd have East Coast, Central, and West Coast cartoons.
Yeah.
So, like, your final cartoon would end at like 10 or 11, and then it would like change to golf.
Right.
Right? Like, and it would just be like this hard stop. It's like, we'll be right back after these messages. All right, they're stacking up the links here. You're just like, well, now, I've already eaten like 2 boxes of sugary cereal. You know what I mean? Like, I've drank half a gallon of milk. I've been up for like 4 straight hours. My parents are just fine with it because I'm not bugging them.
Not bugging them. That was it was the beginning of the babysitter, right? But yeah, man, it's like right after the shmoo, here comes Wild World of Sports, and it'll be like bowling. You're like,
yeah,
how can you go from greatness to this, right?
Exactly. God. So I remember game changer for me. big game changer. And this again, this is why we make the show, because you have these memories that just kind of pop out at you. So I was, so what is it, like 81? So I'd have been 5, maybe 6 years old, depending on when this all occurred. Sitting there watching Saturday morning cartoons, sitting there eating probably Frosted Flakes, have a bowl of cereal, watch.
Oh yeah.
And this commercial comes on, and it's for He-Man, right?
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, I've never seen this before, and the commercial is 2 kids playing with action figures, and the theme song's like He-Man, He-Man, He-Man. Like, they don't have any music behind it. It's just like some dude that's like He-Man, and there's like kids are like I'm the good guy, I'm the bad guy, and we fight. And then it ended. I remember just literally like hopping up, running across the coffee table, hitting the floor, busting into my parents' room who were still sleeping. I'm in like these little kid tidy whities and probably a Spider-Man t-shirt, hop on their bed, and I'm like, parents. You have to be informed of the most important thing of my young life. And I'm going to tell you now, and I'm going to tell you loud and repeatedly until you buy them for me, all of them. And that was a Saturday morning. Like, that was probably between Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends and the Looney Tunes, but I was just like, boom, flying, like, but I didn't know it was called He-Man. I thought it was Key-Man. I didn't know what the hell He-Man was.
Right.
To like the way the guy was saying it, I thought it was, and it made sense because in the thing, He-Man's sword was the key to Castle Grayskull.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, makes sense. Like, I need the Key-Man stuff.
Your parents are probably going around going, "What the hell's a Key-Man? I can't find it anywhere."
Yeah. My poor parents were just like, and so then my parents spent the next 10 years walking around on, like, stepping on weapons and stuff, because I already had the Star Wars guys.
Right. So mine's a little earlier than yours. So 75 is, I'm a 5 years old. So that's when I really start paying attention to TV. Like I said, Hong Kong Phooey was the big one for me. But I loved Space Ghost. I loved the Herculoids. Because they had a show that came on at the same time. It was all tied in each other. Freaking Thundar the Barbarian, man. Fantastic.
Dude, Thundar was awesome.
Yeah,
I remember Thundar. Thundar was great.
It's still fun to watch. I mean, even if you do it, it's like they combine Star Wars and Conan is what they did.
Mm-hmm.
It's fantastic. But I was a Sid and Marty Krofft kid, so I grew up with the live action stuff, Land of the Lost, Sigmund the Sea Monster, H.R. Puffin stuff, Lidsville, the Bugaloos. So I grew up with that coming out of the mid to late 70s, and you could tell these guys were just in the back, Sid and Marty Krofft, smoking a big blunt, going, it'd be funny for the kids. A talking tree that looks like Jimi Hendrix.
Yep. The funny thing was, so I completely, like, I have no memory of what is Puffin stuff, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I do remember the other stuff, but HR Puffin stuff just was not there. Well, like, there's just a blank, right?
It was the first.
Right. Until the early 90s, when some of these kind of stoner grunge rock bands did a cover of the HR Puffin stuff theme song.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh yeah, there's a show from the 70s. I was like, that's not possible, because I was there. Like, I remember the original, like Sesame Streets, like the Wonder Woman TV series, the Hulk, like all this stuff that was just on and was on constant rotation, the whole Hanna-Barbera run.
Yep.
Like all of, like, if it was in the late 70s, because I was born in 75, my parents let me watch pretty much TV all the time. Like, my mom was a stay-at-home mom, so my dad worked all day. Mom was a stay-at-home mom, and like, she had a schedule. It's like, be awake and watch TV and eat lunch, take a nap, wake up, and watch some TV, and then Dad will come home, and we'll, So I watched a lot of TV when I was
Yeah.
little. I have no memory of HR Puff and stuff. I was like, that's not possibly real.
But
Seriously,
well,
they're making this is one of those, because you had a lot of this in the early '90s, or like kind of the early to mid '90s, of a whole lot of retro.
Yeah, I remember.
It was whole cloth creations that were made to look old.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's what this is. There's no possible way that this was actually on TV for kids. This is like the hamburger guys.
Exactly. That's the McDonald's characters.
The Hunger Force.
Well, the McDonald Land characters, the hamburger, Mayor McCheese, and all those, they were inspired by H.R. Puff and stuff. Puff and stuff was 71 to 74. So it was, and all the other shows, Sigmund and Sea Monster, all that stuff was mid 70s. And that's probably where you kind of start putting some pieces together. So, yeah, because H.R. Puff stuff was kind of alone for a while. And then you got, I think, Lidsville came out next, which is Butch Patrick from the Munsters, where he goes into a weird world where everything is hats. And Charles Nelson Riley is the bad guy, And, of course, it's great. You ought to check it out. And I'm sure you can find it on YouTube. Of course, you had Electra Woman and Dinah Girl. You had the Far Out Space Nuts, which was Gilligan, and I can't remember the other actor's name, but not that Gilligan's is the other guy's name, but Bob Denver. But
right,
the other guy was kind of a big chunky guy. But you had all these shows; they were just cranking out stuff, man. But one of the biggest influences on me was the Shazam and Isis Hour.
Oh. Dude. So again, when I said my mom used to make me take naps, when I'd wake up from taking naps, like Scooby-Doo would be on her Sesame Street. There were certain things.
Yeah.
But Wonder Woman and Incredible Hulk, they followed each other.
Yeah.
Or in my head, they followed each other.
They did.
Right? But I found a video clip or an audio clip looking for sound effects for Scary Dad. And it's like a very special episode thing coming on, like it's cut in. It's like Wonder Woman and the Hulk will not be seen tonight because we're cutting in with the Grinch or something. And I was like, oh crap, they did follow each other.
Yeah.
Like in my head, they were just like back to back. But of course, this is like years and years separated them.
Right.
But Shazam and Isis.
Man, still to this day, if you get a chance, pull up some footage of Isis. Man, you talk about a good-looking lady, man. She was gorgeous. Shazam, not so much gorgeous.
Yeah, he's not so gorgeous. Well, the thing was, and Saturday morning cartoons just lead to some conversations. It was probably 4 or 5 years ago. So my dad died in 2014, so 6 years ago. But he was always, he was not a comic book nerd. He was kind of just a cool sort of rock and roll guy. And, but I remember being a little kid and I don't remember how old I was, but I was obviously very small. Him telling me about Superman. This is like, Daddy, what is Superman? And him being like, Superman is this. And not Superman is this character. Superman is this guy who can fly and saves the world. I'm like, okay, well then obviously Superman's flying around saving the world somewhere. So he told me about Superman. He told me about Batman.
Yeah.
But in our little house in Houston before we moved south, I remember there was this little magazine rack in the bathroom, and it had some Sports Illustrated, it had a couple National Geographic, and it had the first 3 issues of the Shazam comic book from the 70s.
Yeah.
So this would have been in if I'm remembering it, probably 78. Because I was born in late 75, so 78, 79. So he had these things just floating around in a pile of books, right? But it's this picture of Shazam on the cover with Superman, and it's like, dun dun dun, it was the re-release of the Shazam character from the 40s.
Right.
that got locked up in litigation, and then they re-released it. And he had the first 3 issues. Well, a few years ago, I was on eBay, and I just, first 3 issues for like $50. I was like, sold, because I remember those things floating around. And I have no idea where they would be now, but I bought them. I'm like, yeah, that's from my childhood, right? Like, I'm keeping this. This is awesome.
Sure. Yeah.
My dad was real big into superheroes. Like,
well, I was, and just like you said, to me, Batman was first. I was a huge Batman fan as a kid. I had, all the Mako dolls. I had the Bat Cave, the Batmobile, all that stuff. Then I got into Spider-Man, and my dad would always say, Superman beat any of those guys. And he'd always throw that in their face.
My dad would say the same thing.
Superman beat all those guys.
He'd just be like, those guys are cool, but Superman would just...
And I was like, it's like he's not wearing a mask or anything. How cool can he be, But he would always throw that at me. And here's the thing, man. So, as a kid, Saturday morning, Justice League is coming on, the Super Friends. And I got me a big bowl of Captain Crunch with Crunch Berries. I'm opening up 3 Pixie Sticks, pouring that on top of the cereal.
Of course.
And, by the end of the episode, my hair standing up because of the sugar rush. Yeah. And I'm running around, and I'm a combination of Superman and the Samurai and Apache Chief and...
Dude, so... I don't remember when it started, but from the time I was probably about 4 till the time I was about 10, every single towel my mom had a big ass hole ripped in each corner because they get a safety pin.
Oh yeah.
And dude, I would safety pin a towel over my shoulders, and it would be a cape. It didn't matter what color it was. Most of them were red because I was Superman or Batman or red or blue. But I had this big, one of those huge safety pins. And I tell you what, when you're running and you catch your cape on the couch and that safety pin pops and jabs you in the neck, it hurts.
I remember a while.
I don't have any tattoos. A friend of mine, what are you, scared of needles? I'm like, you bet your ass I am. I've stabbed myself in the neck with a needle so many times.
Yeah, man. Fantastic. Yeah, it's amazing because it really just opened up your imagination, Whatever you were watching, you were instantly becoming, right?
Yeah.
As soon as the episode was over, you're, whoever you were watching, Plastic Man, whatever it was, And
it really didn't matter. You're just like, okay, you flit from underdog to Jabberjaw.
Oh, yeah.
to Spider-Man. Right.
Hey, do you remember Mr. Jaws?
Nuh-uh.
Okay, so this was on during the Pink Panther show, and you had a shark that rode around, swam around with a top hat on, and he would chase this little goldfish all the time. He'd come up and go, "I gotcha!" And it was Mr. Jaws. That was the name of the show.
If was it on Pink Panther?
I believe so. It might have spin off and became his own show, but it was very popular there for a couple of years, and it just kind of disappeared. But I remember watching it, and then the ant and the aardvark would come on. Hey, what are you gonna do? You're gonna chase the ant.
I remember that, and thinking about today's cancel culture and certain voices.
Yeah,
it's And of course, if we're talking about Saturday morning cartoons, we won't even start talking about it yet because it's just the king of all. But certain voices, certain attitudes towards things, and we're just little kids being I don't like aardvarks. I like ants.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the things that probably, well, no, not probably. Okay, Wonder Woman was a primetime show.
Yeah.
That show, that and the Hulk had a tremendous effect on the way my brain is wired.
Absolutely.
It's watching the Wonder Woman show, my wife's like, "You have a type." And I'm like, you're damn right I have a type, because I remember, like, I was 5 years old. I would open my eyes
It's called
and
Linda
see
Carter.
Linda Carter
That's my
spinning
type.
around and running in slow motion. Like, that was.
Oh.
And, so, and of course, Incredible Hulk with Lou Ferrigno.
Man,
And
that opening,
dude,
the opening where, of course, you seeing him getting that in that chair, and it's doing the scans and all the stuff, but then it shows him when he's changing that tire, and he changes. Used to scare the crap out of me, man.
dude, the Hulk is one because I am such a horror movie fan. But even as a little kid, it's like I remember being just I loved the Hulk. He was my favorite guy. Like I loved him.
Yeah.
But he was also scared the
Sure,
hell out of
yeah.
me because he was so just
You know,
and like the writers and the comics have made him so thoroughly invulnerable to everything. But if you watch some of those shows, when he gets shot, he bleeds.
yeah.
He like takes a bullet and he like gets mad about it, and he doesn't really stop wrecking shop, but he's still got a bullet in him and he's still bleeding out of his chest. He's like
And you can't overlook the fact of Bill Bixby making you care for this character, man. He in my mind, I like Ruffalo a lot, but Bill Bixby to me is Banner. I mean,
and Ferrigno to me is the Hulk.
Yeah.
Like I do like I like Ruffalo. Like we just started watching the. Hold on, I'm gonna put a pin in that. I want to go back because when I was talking about Wonder Woman, I said my favorite Saturday morning cartoon was Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends.
Oh yeah.
And it wasn't because of Spider-Man or Iceman either.
Yeah, I know.
Like, dude, love them redheads. And the quick funny story. So that show was on Netflix.
Yeah.
They took it off maybe like 3 or 4 years ago, but it was on Netflix. And when Juliet was she was 4 or 5 years old. I'm like, hey, babe, come sit here and watch Spider-Man with Daddy. And I'm sitting here watching Spider-Man. It was like Saturday morning, like we're watching Saturday morning cartoons, and somebody shoots Firestar down out of the sky and like picks her up and carries her off, and my wife just kind of like stumbles through the house like looking for coffee, and she's like, what are you watching? Because it's like this full-on crotch shot of like of passed out fire bodysuit,
Yeah.
which is just just a naked form that they painted, right?
Sure. Yeah.
But yeah, so I have a type. Yellow bodysuits and red hair.
Oh man.
But nah, dude, like
my moment with that was Debbie Harry, man. I saw Debbie Harry perform on she was Blondie, performing on American Bandstand, and I'm probably 7 years old, and I'm just like, wow. That was kind of it for me. So
yeah, see, I got that thing for brunettes, so it's
ironically, my stepmother looks a whole lot like Linda Carter. Yeah, which I was a fan of Wonder Woman too. So when my dad remarried, I was like, yeah, Dad,
there you go, man.
You're the man.
There you go, Dad.
Well, I don't know if I told you this story or not either, but we went to school together. She's only a few years older than me, so my dad is the man.
And you're Ted.
I'm Ted. Yeah, you better believe it. Yeah, that's exactly it, man.
That's awesome.
I mean, my wife is 2 years older than me, and then my stepmother's like 4 years older than me. So,
wow. So I'm gonna start calling you Ricky Morton Esquire.
Esquire. Yep. True story. Matter of fact, my grandfather would call my stepmother Wonder Woman because that's who she looked like. So she don't have the blue eyes, but she had brown eyes, but same hair, kind of the same jawline. Yeah. She's yeah.
The world's a strange place, man.
And my wife looks like Meg Ryan and Nicole Kidman kind of mixed.
You can't lose.
Yeah.
Can't lose with either of them.
Yeah.
Put them together, and you win.
Did I say I liked Blondie? There's a type
Yeah, right?
there, right? Goldie Hawn. She looks like Goldie Hawn too. So
what we're saying, kids, is Saturday morning cartoons had a greater influence than maybe you imagined.
well, when you were talking about Scooby-Doo earlier, it's like, look, man, that's a gateway to us liking the horror stuff when we got older, because it was like, okay, I like being scared, but don't scare me too much.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, because that's why you were watching it, because of spooky ghosts, woo, and all those things. It was just enough as a kid, and you get braver as you go along. Next thing you're renting Monster Squad, right?
Yeah, and I actually, I hope, I don't know, it'll be interesting. The whole thing, Bloody Disgusting, which is the kind of that they're part and parcel with Fangoria at this point.
Yeah.
Put out a call for articles, and I submitted a couple of article ideas to their queue.
Cool.
And one of my article ideas was pretty much what this show is. It's like just a nostalgic look back at what, like how wrapped up in scary we were. Like, it wasn't, and I said at the beginning of the show, this is not a horror podcast. We're not talking about that, but it's like you look at Scooby-Doo and you look at kind of like some of the Disney stuff, a lot of the Disney stuff with the Lonesome Ghosts and Casper the Friendly Ghost.
Even the Wicked Queen and Snow White. I mean, these horror elements were everywhere.
And like as a kid, you had like the Weekly World News on the newsstand, and you like laugh at the Weekly World News. Dude, that was full of ghost stories and cryptids, and it was right there, and it was at eye level when you were 8.
Yeah.
Like, you just turn your head and be like, it's a monster, and it's a true story. Like, oh man, monsters are, you know what I mean? And we were just surrounded by it. It was just a matter of course. So it's very difficult to break out of that thought process, because I mean, it was just everywhere for us at the time, and like Jabberjaw and stuff like that. That was directly influenced by Jaws.
Yeah,
like, oh,
without a doubt.
Sharks are popular. Kids like sharks.
Yeah.
Like, draw a shark.
You had Godzilla cartoons and all that stuff too. And I mean, even look at the bands that we liked. Every band that, and I know it's the kind of a factor with both of us, but you like that shock factor of the horror based Alice Cooper, Kiss, Ozzy, all the metal stuff we were talking about earlier, the Satanic Panic movement.
Yeah.
Even The Cure has that dark, brooding, dark side to it that draws you in because you're fascinated by that stuff. It's in our fabric of who we are.
The question is, what's in the box? What's the story?
Yeah, right.
That's like to throw back to last week, and with the cartoons is like a little bit more passive, but again, like He-Man, it's like, here's this Castle Grayskull, here's this skull-shaped castle.
Yeah.
And this Grim Reaper like bad guy and this muscular hero.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, well, I don't care. I have to be a part of this. Yeah. I need that sword. I need that castle. I need to explore the inside of that castle. It's important,
Well, and the part of that too is a good guy is only as good as how bad the bad guy is. If your bad guy is not bad enough, nobody cares. And I think we talked about that during the Star Wars stuff we were talking about. It just, our bad guys aren't bad enough anymore in the newer version of what we're seeing, and it really kind of puts a damper on how much you care about the other characters because you don't feel threatened. Yeah, it's very difficult to sympathize. Well, not sympathize, but yeah, when your bad guys are totally bad, like there's a delineator. Like whenever it's like, okay, well, here's a sympathetic. It's like he's really bad, but you kind of understand why he's doing all the bad stuff. It's like that's why Yeah.
Kicking back to like Friday the 13th.
Sure.
It's like when in Jason versus Freddy, when they're like, okay, well, Jason's kind of sort of more technically the good guy, and Freddy is more technically the bad guy. It's like,
yeah.
I'm sorry, dude. Go back and watch those Friday movies. He's not a good guy. He's not sympathetic in any way. Like there's no. I'm sorry. I'm not going to accept that.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
If you want to like stand here and have this weird scale of justice and discuss who's more evil between Jason and Freddy,
yeah,
I think Jason still tips the scales a little bit.
Sure.
Because he kills a dog in part 2. Freddy never killed a dog.
Well, Freddy came back when a dog pissed on his grave, so it's like, payback.
Yeah, so it's like, but there's no like, oh, well, Jason drowned, so we should feel sorry for him. Like, dude, that guy killed like 200 people. He's not a good guy.
His body count,
right?
I think, is past Freddy's for sure. So
yeah, big time.
Yeah.
So you were talking about the Marvel, like Spider-Man, like Captain America. I was gonna get to. I said let's put a pin in it. We were watching the Marvel movies.
Yeah.
I finally got we were watching in order, not in order of release, but chronological.
Right.
So you start with Captain America, then you go to Captain Marvel,
right?
Then go to Iron Man, and my daughter's like, I can watch these. I'm like, we're in quarantine. You can pretty much watch whatever you want as long as. So we watched Captain America, and we were talking about Ruffalo and the Hulk, and the difference. The Disney Marvel movies are amazing.
Yeah.
I've been in the theater. I've watched every single one of them in the theater. I've been like within the first couple of days of them coming out. They're absolutely amazing.
Yep.
I've got no arguments about it. The Hulk, like every single one of those characters are better rendered than any of their Lou Ferrigno's still the Hulk to me.
Yeah. It's what you grew up with. Man.
Ruffalo's a good banner.
Yeah.
But Bixby's a better banner.
Yeah. I agree, man. There was something about you felt such sympathy for him. Come on, man. That music at the end of the Hulk episodes, that's the saddest music ever recorded, man.
It was beautiful.
I mean, he's ripped up all of his clothes, and now he's having to leave this town, so they can't find him. He just wanders to another town. It's just like, holy crap, man. This dude's just doomed,
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, fantastic.
He can't go anywhere without getting in a fight either.
Yeah.
That's the thing. It's like I've lived my whole life without really getting in many fights at all. Like I've been in a couple because I was stupid, and I've been in a couple because I couldn't avoid it. But like in 44 years, that's like 4 fights. And most of that was when I was a teenager.
Yeah.
This guy, every time he like walks, he's like, "Hey, I just need to get some gas." And there's some punk being like, "Hey,
you want some gas, huh?" Man, yeah.
Like, you don't want to make me angry, man.
Yeah, great stuff, man. The Laugh Olympics, man, where you kind of had all the Hanna-Barbera groups fighting each other or competing against each other. I love growing up watching that stuff. We kind of brought up the whole Tom and Jerry aspect there. And like you said, there's a group we're not talking about that is...
We're about to, though.
Yeah, which is, I mean...
Because it's the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I mean, come on. Warner Brothers.
When I...
I mean...
Dude. So I'll go first. When I was a little... I mean... Looney Tunes should be like required in school. They should make kids sit there for an hour and watch Looney Tunes before they get into any of their bullcrap stuff. And when I say bullcrap stuff, let me just segue for just a second. We're still quarantined, right?
Yeah.
I have a full-time job. My wife has a full-time job. We're both working from home. Sharing an office. The school district sends home the work. And I mentioned this in the first episode.
Yeah.
Today they sent home a helpful schedule. This will help us with our homeschooling. They sent us a schedule, and this schedule is broken out from 7:30 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. From 7:30 to 8 is breakfast. From 8 to 8:30 is reading. From 8:30 to 9 is discussion of the reading. From 9 to 9:15 is, and there is no break. Like there are little breaks. Like, oh, you know, like go outside and run around with your kids. Get them a break. It's like, when am I supposed to work? Like I'm about to send the school district a bill. Like, okay, well, now I'm a kindergarten teacher and a third grade teacher, so you got to send me whatever a salary for like being a teacher is, because this is ridiculous. Everybody's about to freaking just like squeeze each other's head off. And you know what would make it so much better?
Some Bugs Bunny.
Dropping an anvil on some stupid coyote. Like, bonk. You know?
Or Sam the shepherd dog beating up the coyote. Either one, you know.
Exactly. Poor coyote, dude. He gets a bad rap, but he's a cool guy. Like, at least he keeps trying.
Yeah, man. I mean, there's... well, the other night, you can pull up on YouTube where people have just thrown together 4 hours of just Warner Brothers Looney Tunes, and you just throw it on, man, and you can just sit there and just go through every one of them. I would almost rather sit there and watch those than try to find something halfway interesting to watch on Netflix, when I know that this is really going to give me what I'm wanting internally, which is comfort, because it's like an old friend, right? You grew up,
and hilarity.
You grew up watching this stuff, and it's still funny. You may even pick up on a few jokes you didn't catch as a kid that you pick up on now. Man, Bullwinkle is
big time,
full of them, man.
Okay, I'm gonna have to go back and watch Bullwinkle, because like maybe about a year ago, I found a DVD box set of Looney Tunes.
Yeah.
It was like 3 discs, so like 2 or 3 hours of content. I brought it home. I was like, okay, girls, whatever it is you're watching that sucks, I'm going to put this in and you're going to forget about it. And they both sat there, eyes open, mouth dropped, laughing at every joke.
Yeah.
And they were just like, we need more. And eventually they watched it so much that they got tired of what we had.
Yeah.
Which is fair enough. I'm like, they're just like, but I'm sitting there watching these Looney Tunes with them, and it is... I realized that at the time they were making the Looney Tunes, that it was a business.
Yeah.
It was a corporate thing. They said, hey, here's your storyboard. Hey, artists, art. Hey, voice actors, act. Do things.
Yep.
But there are so many layers to the jokes. It's so transcendent from just little characters walking around and like what they say and what they do.
Yeah.
And even that just random anvil drop.
Yeah.
You're like,
yeah.
Okay, it's like a perfectly timed drum beat. It's just like it really does. It's they cared. They weren't just throwing slapstick together. There was really a rim shot.
Right. Well, to me, it was always like they knew how they built this barrage of characters that had a wide spectrum, and you could pick any scenario, and a certain character was perfect for this story. I think that's what they did so well, because Bugs Bunny wouldn't have worked in a lot of the stuff that Daffy Duck was in. I mean, there's a different kind of sarcasm there, and Foghorn Leghorn. I mean, it's amazing that they built such big, huge, over-the-top personalities that really don't cross. You don't get Yosemite Sam and Porky Pig confused.
Right. No, of course you don't sit there and be like, hey, what was that episode with, and like the rabbit season versus duck season, and them flipping the signs. It's like, and Yosemite sitting there just like Or Elmer Fudd's sitting there just like watching the signs flip, and he's like, I don't care. He just shoots the duck in the face. He's like, I'm tired of waiting. I'm just gonna shoot a duck. Just so many little like social commentary, so many details on everything.
Yeah, the opera one with Bugs Bunny and Elmer Fudd. Why would you want to shoot a rabbit? And how about the one where Bugs Bunny is the conductor, and he's got that fat guy singing. He's like, and he's just like holding up, and he takes his hand out of the glove, and the glove's still up there.
Yeah. And the guy suffocates and falls over. Well, Bugs Bunny shoots that guy for coughing. He's like getting ready, and then one dude in the audience coughing. He's like, bam! Just shoots that dude in the face.
You try to do that now, and people be jumping all over you. That's violence. Yeah, it was violence.
There's a lot of people that jump on all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
But what I have to say is, whenever I was a kid, so I was going to grandma's house for Christmas or whatever, so family gatherings, I would have been, like 4 or 5 years old.
Yeah.
Saturday morning cartoons, they are what they are.
Yeah.
What's on is what's on. There's no Netflix. You're not going to choose something else, right?
Yeah.
But I remember my uncle, so he was, when I was a little kid, he was in college. So age-wise, whatever, right? But we'd go home for holidays or go to grandma's house for holidays. And a show would be, like Looney Tunes would be on. I'd be tearing around the house, and he'd catch me and kind of like wrestle me down and be like, well, watch this. It's funny. And like, I was familiar with Bugs Bunny. Like, I knew Bugs Bunny. I was cool with Bugs Bunny, but my Uncle Ron was like, no.
Yeah.
This one you have to watch. You have to watch this anvil drop on this kid's head. Like, you have to see this. It's hilarious. And you sit there and just like, he'd sit there and just like belly laugh, roll on the ground, like, ah!
Yeah.
I realized later he was probably stoned, but that's a whole other discussion.
And it's that thing you're talking about. No, go ahead. Sorry.
He made me appreciate, like, just the like you say, like the complete lunacy of Looney Tunes, but also just like how comfortable it is.
Yeah.
How funny it is, just without being like, of course they were trying to be funny, but they're freaking hilarious.
Yeah.
And they were made mostly in the 40s.
In the 40s, yeah.
Like that kind, like dropping an anvil on a coyote is funny all the time. Like, it doesn't not be funny. So.
And getting back to the whole violence thing, I remember people saying, "Oh, you're letting your kids watch that, and that's teaching them violence." And never once did I go out and try to paint a cave on the side of a rock so a car would try to drive through it. Or I never tried to drop an anvil on somebody's head.
I remember the first time my grandfather had an anvil bolted to a workbench in his, and like this was my grandparents. We didn't see as often because they lived further away. So the first, like, I was probably like 12 years old. Like, it's not the first time I've seen an anvil. First time I ever tried to pick one up.
Right.
Like.
Okay.
Hello.
So he's like, I'm like, oh, what's that? Is that because I thought it was a vice. Because, vices have the.
Yeah.
Like, what, it's like, oh, what's that? He's like, oh, that's he's like, oh, it's a little anvil. I used to do some metal work. And it was sitting on a bench, and I went over there, and I was like, I kind of wanted to ask him if I could have it, because I thought it was cool.
Yeah.
But I was like 12 years old, and like, what am I going to do with an anvil? Drop it on a rabbit's head, right? Like, I don't know what an anvil really is, but I do remember trying to pick that thing up and being like, this thing is heavy.
Yeah.
I get the joke now.
It, yeah.
like, if you drop this on somebody, it would kill the hell out of them really, really fast. This is like, it's not a good idea to go running around dropping anvils on people.
Right.
And that makes it even funnier because you're just like, I guess if you know what an anvil is, you're like, oh, that's pretty funny. If you don't know what an anvil is and you discover it,
Yeah.
you're like, oh.
I've been enlightened.
There we go.
It's kind of like my daughter grew up watching. She got hooked on Futurama back, when she was in high school.
It's a great show.
Oh, it's fantastic. And she had just got through watching the 70s remake of Invasion of the Body Snatchers, which absolutely floored her. She was just blown away by this movie. Of course, the ending of it just traumatized her. And
that's an amazing remake.
Yeah.
Like, that's probably one of the best remakes of a horror movie ever.
Right.
Because it's
fantastic.
It's got Donald Sutherland in it,
Exactly.
like doing the thing at the end, like, and the dog.
Oh, the dog freaked me out. But she was watching an episode of Futurama, and there was a scene where they're pretending to be robots, and they're all dressed up, and they're walking by, and then one of them realizes it's not a robot and looks at them and goes, ah! And she was like, oh my God, they just referenced Invasion of the Body Snatchers on Futurama, and she got the joke because she had seen the movie, And I was
of course.
Yeah, and, I love when, like you said, you get that revelation of how these things tie together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's just a cool little, life imitating art, vice versa kind of thing, It's pretty cool.
I'm going to top line a couple because you were probably too old. I was a little old, but they were on because my sister was younger.
Yeah.
But these deserve honorable mentions.
Sure.
I was not too old for the Smurfs.
I watched a little Smurfs, yeah.
My dad used to crack, like you said, your dad's like, Hong Kong food, that's awesome. My dad'd be like, communists. And he didn't say it like, he was joking because I didn't have any idea what communists were.
Right.
He's like, bunch of communists. Crack a joke and walk off and go to the other room. Muppet Babies.
Yep.
Which was ridiculous,
yep.
But if you watch Muppet Babies, a buddy of mine who has a podcast talked about how, like, he's 10 years younger than me, maybe. And he's talking about how he didn't really understand Star Wars contextually.
Sure.
Because he only knew it through Muppet Babies.
Wow.
And I was like, I never realized it either, but yeah, they had so many references to Star Wars in Muppet Babies that kind of opens that whole thing up.
Yeah. So I've got a younger sister that's probably closer to your age, maybe a little younger, but yeah, the Smurfs. She loved Punky Brewster, all those shows, and and definitely she loved the Muppet Babies. So I grew up watching all those, even though I didn't really want to.
Right. Well, it's like, it's on because it's Saturday morning, and what do? You eat sugary cereals, and whenever the Muppet Babies are on, you hope your dad doesn't remember to tell you to mow the yard.
Right.
Because that's how old you are now. Before, you just sit there in your underwear and tell him to buy you He-Man toys, but then like 6-7 years later, while Muppet Babies are on, he's like, "Oh yeah."
But then it turned into Care Bears and then Rainbow Bright, and by then I was like, "Yeah, I'm checking out."
Yeah, I'm done. But the thing I would go always back to is Looney Tunes.
Yeah, absolutely.
If Looney Tunes is on, I'm in.
Yeah.
I'm stuck. I don't care what. Are we talking about something? Are we doing band practice? I don't. Freaking Looney Tunes is on.
That's right.
I'm sitting here. Like,
it's Speedy Gonzales, man, get off my back.
Exactly. Slowpoke Rodriguez is the. So good, man. Yeah. So good. All right, man. Well, I think we went past time again.
That's okay.
What's your final thoughts? Well, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna drop my final thought in real quick. I'm gonna have to say Wonder Woman was not Saturday morning cartoon, but Firestar was. Spider-Man and his amazing friends. There's a
yeah. It's just
you're a little kid, you're a little boy, and you watch Firestar get shot out of the sky. That's game changer.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. Saturday mornings when you were a kid, it's what you lived for. You got through the school week, Saturday was your day, and it started with your favorite shows. So it's almost like that was the whole point of making it through the week, was to be able to gain control of the TV for 4 or 5 hours and watch the stuff that you want to watch. And usually after that, for me, it led into Memphis wrestling. So, if I wasn't in a location where we picked that up, like I said, it ended up being Wild World of Sports. And you just crossed your fingers and prayed that it was either the Chinese Acrobats or the Harlem Globetrotters. That's what you were hoping for in that part of the afternoon. But, you always try to figure out if you could go back to a certain time in your life, what would it be? I tell you what, it would be hard to beat one of those Saturday mornings, with my dad asleep in the bed and me in front of the old huge console TV. Yeah, man, just golden times.
Same thing, man. Relive. I've had the conversation because my wife and I've had the conversation. It's like, it's like, oh, would you go back here? Like, good times. People always be like, it's like, well, my life is pretty good, but there's a lot of places I'd like to go back and visit.
Yeah.
Because, Saturday morning cartoons, hanging out with Dad, Dad telling me Superman would just take a deep breath and like blow all these guys out into the space. Man,
that's so much problem. Like that same thing. He's like, man, he could just thump his finger and blow them all away,
But yeah, man, it was good. It was such good times. So
yeah,
that is what's awesome, man.
That's right.
Well, we're gonna talk about what we're talking about next week. If you've got other things you want us to talk about, what is awesome. Thank you guys for tuning in. This is episode 4. I'm gonna do some quick math and assume that we're gonna do episode 5 next week. We don't exactly know what we're talking about yet, but we'll figure that out, and then you'll find out when we do. So
yeah.
Once again, thank you so much for listening. We'll shout at you next week.
Adios.